The second major is already upon us, and I figured in this video we would go through, we'd take a peek at the bracket. I would tell you guys who I think is going to win each of these individual matches and why. And as I go throughout these predictions, down in the comments below, leave me anything that you agree with, that you disagree with. I know in yesterday's or the day before that's video, when we went through the power rankings, you guys disagreed a little bit with where to put LA Thieves and LAG and stuff like that. It seems like I might have been a little bit more clear now after the first day of matches, but without further ado, let's go ahead and let's take a peek at the bracket. So as we are putting this out, the first day of matches have actually already happened. So if we're looking at the bracket here, I will admit that I actually got both of these wrong. So if we look down in elimination round one, first match, Paris versus LA Thieves, I just thought LA Thieves was in shambles. There's absolutely no way that they win this match. And they did, and they looked pretty good doing it. So they went ahead and they moved on, and now they're in round two with a matchup against the London Royal Ravens. And the other round one matchup I thought was a bit of a toss-up. Even though LAG did get a win over Atlanta, there really hasn't been much that they've done as of late that was anywhere near as impressive as that victory over Atlanta. But I wasn't sure what you were going to get from the SMGs from Florida, and Neptune absolutely showed up. If he is playing super fast, super aggro, really aggressive, like he was in that matchup against LAG, and he's successful at it, that's what makes them really good, because you know what you're going to get out of Skies, you know what you're going to get out of Awakening. So Florida went ahead and won this match to move into round two with a matchup against Seattle. So with that, let's go ahead, let's get to winners round one. Then we'll just start filling it in as we go throughout. Winners round one, big matchup here is actually the one that's on the bottom. But the first one, we have OpTic versus Toronto. When it comes to these two teams, I was actually a little bit surprised that Toronto even made it into the winners bracket. They were kind of that third team from Group A that really did kind of limp into the finish. I believe they finished 2 and 3 in the group stage. Insight looks like he belongs. Obviously, there's some chemistry there from when they played on Team Singularity together. And I think that this is a team that absolutely has proven that they can beat teams that are above them in the power rankings, but there's also always that chance that they lose to teams that are under them. Whereas I think Chicago had a little bit of an eye-opening experience throughout that second group stage. I think that their focus, I think that they've looked better and better as the stage went on. So I'm excited to see what OpTic can do in this tournament. And for now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put them into winners round two, which is going to take Toronto and actually move them down into losers round three, as we go ahead and rearrange a little bit here. So Toronto moves down to losers round three. OpTic moves on, which brings us to the big matchup of the matches for Thursday. New York SUBLINERS versus Dallas Empire. This is a massive one. And when we're looking at this, New York is playing super well, although I have said as of late, although they did go 4-1 in the group stages, you could make an argument that they're beating up on teams that really are towards the bottom third of the power rankings, absolutely the bottom 6 or so. That Group A, with the way that LA Thieves ended up playing, really was not all that super competitive. So when it comes to those matches over in Group A, that's just something that we have to keep in mind. And when it comes to Dallas, they've shown pretty consistently that they can get beat. Now, not that they can get beat by basically anybody. The only teams that they lost to is they lost to Atlanta twice. That happened in Major 1 tournament. They lost to Minnesota twice, and they lost to OpTic also. So when you're talking about teams that they lost to, yes, they have 5 losses on the season, but they're to some pretty top-tier teams. But when it comes to this, we are not seeing the same MVP caliber Shotzzy that they saw we saw throughout the Modern Warfare season last year. I do think Huke is playing really well. He's definitely making up for what we're not getting from Shotzzy, but right now, I just don't fully believe in Dallas. I think that they'll win a couple matches. I think that they'll make a run, but in this one, I got to go with New York. I just think that New York is playing better right now. They're the more dangerous team, and I'm excited to see what happens with them. So that's going to take Dallas. That's going to move them down into round 3, and we'll see how they go from there. So winners round 2, we have Atlanta versus Chicago, unbelievable matchup. Rocker versus New York, another unbelievable matchup. I can't wait to talk about those ones, but we have to move along down here on the bottom. So we've got round 2 here between the Seattle Surge and Florida Mutineers. To me, this is a toss-up because it really does come down to when you look at the flex position for both these teams. I think Awakening and how Gunless has been playing, I think that they're pretty close. And when you look at the main AR, Octane and Skies, they both have the ability to be the best player on the map. The storyline with these two teams is, what are you going to get from the SMG position? Are we going to get the Neptune that we saw in the first round against LAG? Or is he not going to show up? And what are we going to end up getting from Pristini? Is Pristini going to continue to play that he did throughout stage 2? Or is he going to go back to how he played during stage 1? Those are the biggest question marks for me. And of course, you have the other SMGs, Looney and Slasher. So when I'm comparing these teams, there really is question marks for both these guys. But loser goes home, winner advances. I'm actually, and this is a little bit surprising, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Seattle. I think that they've been playing really well as of late. They went ahead and had they not lost the 4v2 in that third round of control in that map 3 against Minnesota, they actually end up beating Minnesota. So they were very close to winding up in that winner's bracket. They're on fire right now. Florida played tremendous against LAG. So it's absolutely a toss-up. But for right now, I'm going to put Seattle through, which brings us to the second matchup underneath. And when it comes to London versus LA Thieves, I really do think right now London is still the worst team in the league, even though everything that LA Thieves has gone through, I think that they looked really good with Draza. There were multiple maps where he was almost double positive. Kenny was also playing really well, and that just freed up TJ and Venom to do what they do best on the map. So even though it seems a little bit odd, I have more confidence in LA Thieves here, and this is something that we talked about on the podcast that we did on Minnesota Rockers YouTube channel on Tuesday night. When you're looking at this Paris versus LA Thieves matchup, I said whoever ends up winning that first matchup really does have a pretty easy route to round 3. And that's what we're seeing here. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put LA Thieves through here to give them a matchup with Dallas. And now that we are into this losers round 3, now we've got some pretty insane matchups. Going up above, let's start with winners round 2. When I look at this, you've got Atlanta versus Chicago. And when I'm looking at these two, this is like a heavyweight matchup here. I do think that OpTic's going to end up making a run here through the elimination bracket. I just don't think that they have it yet in this matchup here against Atlanta. Atlanta is obviously, they've shown that they can be beaten, but they've also shown that even though they did get beat, they can come back, they can turn it around, they can get a hot 3-0 to end the group play. So I'm excited to see this one. I think OpTic can absolutely win this. If they come out and they win this, it's not shocking to me at all. A lot of people had mentioned in the video a couple days ago that let's not forget, if aBeZy doesn't get an unbelievable 3-piece on that Moscow hardpoint way back in stage 1, Chicago wins this matchup the first time, and it would be totally different from there. So both of these teams are playing really well. Atlanta's playing probably a little bit better than Chicago. But until in a big situation like this, somebody beats them, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put Atlanta through to the winners final. I think these two teams might match up again, but that's going to go ahead and that's going to put OpTic down to losers round 4. And I'm not entirely sure if this team will go to the top or the bottom. I'm not positive because I think this team went to the bottom of stage 1, but we'll put them in the top for now. I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference anyways, just because the way things end up matching up. You know what? Let's go ahead and let's keep this here. We'll pull one of these down. So moving on from there, we have Minnesota versus the New York Subliners. And this is a massive matchup. Obviously, the last time these two teams met up, a scene absolutely went crazy. It was probably the quickest match that we've had so far this year. It was the hottest of hot 3-0s, but that's when that Minnesota squad was different. And I think that Minnesota is really dangerous. I think when you're comparing these two teams, all of a sudden, Priesta is looking really good in that flex position. Accuracy is super solid. I think that the main AR position probably goes a little bit towards Clayster. I think New York has an edge there, but Standy's been playing great. Attach has been playing great. I absolutely think they have the advantage at SMG. I'm just curious to see how Standy performs in a really big moment like this. If he comes out and he's a gamer and he puts up 30 and 23 and a hard point or something like that, that's what makes Rocker go. In the last matchup they had against Seattle, he didn't start too hot, but by the time they got to the control, he was like 34 and 22 or something crazy like that, and that gave them the momentum that they needed for the reverse sweep against Seattle. So the big storyline here is, how is Standy going to play? And I have faith. I really do. I think he's going to show up. I think Minnesota's going to win this. I think it's going to be unbelievably close, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it to him, which will take New York and put them down into losers round 4. And from here, we'll go through and we'll break down losers round 3. So when it comes to this one, we have Seattle versus Toronto. I feel like this is a match that could probably honestly go either way. I just noticed that I just put New York down there again. I did that earlier. But it just depends for me, like, what type of performance are you going to get out of Bance? What type of performance are you going to get out of Looney? I think when I'm looking at this, again, it's a total toss-up. I think that Seattle is probably the hotter team at the moment, which is why I'm going to give them this matchup. They're playing super well. Just the way that Pristini has come along, the storyline throughout the entirety of the year so far has been, what are they going to get in terms of the production from their SMGs? And I feel like they're finally starting to get that. Looney needs to show up a little bit more for them to really take the next step. But with what Pristini's been doing, they absolutely can win this matchup. And then Dallas and LA Thieves, even though LA Thieves has looked really impressive in their match against Paris in that first matchup, I think that this is too much. I don't even really know if we have to spend too much time on it. I think give them a stage or two and things might change a little bit more. I think they might be able to compete with teams like Dallas, but not right now. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to put Dallas through, which takes us into the winners final and losers round 4. So this winners finals, I do think that this can be a competitive match, okay? I think with how well Minnesota plays in Search and Destroy, if you can take those two maps, all you have to do then is just steal a respawn, and Minnesota is a top 3 control team in the game. So there is a chance that they could really compete here. LAG showed us that it's possible to beat them. I'm just not a bazillion% set on this, okay? So because of that, I am going to put Atlanta through. It's so tough to pick against them. They're playing super well. They're unbelievably just talented across the board, all 4 of their players, until they get in these big time moments and they start to really kind of falter a little bit. It's going to be tough to vote or to pick against them. I'm going to put Atlanta through, but that will go ahead and that'll put Minnesota into the elimination round final or the losers bracket final. So just the fact that they were able to win Group B and get one victory, this is basically guaranteeing them third, fourth, and we'll see what happens from there. For losers round 4, we have OpTic versus Seattle, and I think Seattle is playing much better, like I've said before. I'm just not sure I'm buying in to them beating OpTic when it comes down to a moment as big as this. This is what Scump and Formal are so good at, and Dashy absolutely has the advantage at the flex position. I think OpTic is too much in this matchup, so we're going to put OpTic through. And the big one here is now we have a matchup or a rematch between New York and Dallas. Earlier, I picked New York. I just feel like they're playing like the more dangerous team at the moment, but this is Dallas. And when it comes down to, and I know some of this goes back to how they finished last year, but when it comes down to being in a big time moment like this and making it to a championship Sunday, this is really where they performed the best. And I think in a big time moment like this, in this matchup, I'm not sure Asim is ready for it, and I'm not sure Diamond Khan's ready for it. I'm not even sure that Mac is really ready for it, even though they did have a good showing in the first major. I just think at this point in time, the Dallas roster has been through more. They have a little bit more chemistry. They have a bit more experience when it comes to big time games on big time weekends. So I'm going to put Dallas through this time, but it would not shock me if Clay just continues to do Clay things, right? Clay comes out and he's able to pull off an upset here. Now all of a sudden you have another New York versus OpTic potential matchup. I mean, that could be something special. But moving into elimination round 5, now we have OpTic versus Dallas. And I just think that OpTic is going to be out for blood. I think that they've had enough. They've dropped like the 3-0 to Minnesota, and they didn't have the best performances way back in stage 1 when they lost to New York. I think that they're refocused. I think that Scump was able to get some of his mojo back. He hadn't had the best second stage, but he was a big reason why they were able to beat Dallas when they just played them about a week ago. So anytime these two teams match up, it's going to be super tight. It's just every single position is so talented. Everybody in the roster is so close, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put Chicago through on this one. If Dallas wins, I will not be shocked whatsoever, but just for right now, I'm going to go ahead and go with OpTic, which brings us to the elimination final between OpTic and Minnesota. And in this moment, this is where I would be really surprised if Minnesota is able to beat OpTic in a loser's bracket final right now. I think that Accuracy is probably ready for it. I think Attach is probably ready for it. But being in a position like this, I know the last time they played, it was a hot 3-0, but OpTic came out. It was probably the worst that they looked the entire year. They weren't winning gun battles. They just didn't seem like they were ready for that match as a whole. And I think when you get in a loser's bracket final, I think everything is different. And like I said earlier, this is what makes Scump and Formal who they are. They are two of the most storied players in Call of Duty history, because when it comes to a moment like this, it is never too big for them. I'm going to go ahead in this regard, and I'm going to put OpTic through, which is going to put Minnesota in third place. A great showing there, much better than them losing the very first match the last time they were in this moment, which brings us to our major final, Atlanta versus Chicago. And this is tough. The biggest reason for me that it's so tough is because first of all, I've mentioned this before, but when it comes down to a best of 9, 4 of those maps are search and destroys. And I think when you compare the history of these two teams, even though Atlanta did drop 2 S&D maps to LAG and they were 6-1, so they were not close at all. But historically, if you go all the way back to Modern Warfare, I know the roster was just a tiny bit different, but Atlanta was the most clutch team when it came to map 5. They were the most clutch team when it came to round 11s. And if you have to try to beat, Atlanta is so good in search and destroy. And when you have to beat them the majority of 4 maps in search, it's just so tough to do. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying that it's probably a bit unlikely. So I think OpTic is playing great. I think Scump and Formal are going to show up. I think Scump got some of his moxie back. I think Dashy can absolutely slay with Celium 100%. That does not worry me at all. I think Formal and Arcides are really close. I just think it comes down to the intangibles and the clutch factor. And until Atlanta gets challenged in a big-time scenario like this, and until they lose in a big-time scenario like this, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pick against them. So I think Atlanta probably wins this. I think map count is probably somewhere in like the 5-2, 5-3 range. I think if it goes down to the very last map, I don't see how Chicago clutches up and wins that. But I've been wrong before. There's no saying I wouldn't be wrong again. So I'm going to go with Atlanta as my tournament victor. So down in the comments below, let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you see some surprises? Do you think like going back to Minnesota versus New York in winners round 2, do you think New York wins that? And then maybe Minnesota doesn't quite make the run through losers like I have them? I'm very interested in what you guys have in this. So comments down below. Let me know what your predictions are. If you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave a like if you don't mind, as it really helps out the channel. Enjoy the rest of stage 2. I will be on the co-streams for the Minnesota Rocker matches. So anytime Minnesota's playing, I will be live on Minnesota's YouTube. So go check us out over there. But enjoy the rest of Major 2. I cannot wait to come back and break it all down with you guys. Also, if you're not subscribed, make sure you do so, because after big time matches like Friday night, Saturday night, I usually go live inside the film room where we bring up the VOD, we break everything down. So normally we have like 400 viewers, 500 viewers, so there's a lot of people hanging out, asking a lot of questions, and we break it all down. So make sure you're here for that too. It's a pretty good time. But with that, thank you guys so much for hanging in there. We will see you in the next upload. Enjoy the rest of the Major 2.